"I heard your daughter calling," the street kid said to the millionaire, who was weeping, believing his daughter was dead. Then she leads him to a secret basement, and inside they discover something shocking. Comment giving a score from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The elegant man's tears fell onto the wet asphalt of the great industrial metropolis, each drop carrying the weight of 6 months of despair. His impeccable suit contrasted with the vulnerability that emanated from every sob as he stood in front of the imposing apartment building where he lived. The 30-year-old businessman, with looks reminiscent of old Hollywood heartthrobs, held in his hands a small pink shoe that no longer fit his missing daughter's feet. The small figure that approached him seemed like a ghost emerging from the city's shadows. The frail-looking girl, whom anyone would swear was only 2 years old due to her diminutive stature and twig-like arms, watched the man cry with eyes that carried a disturbing wisdom for someone so young. Her disheveled hair and dirty clothes betrayed the 2 years she had lived on the city's relentless streets. "I heard her calling," the child whispered in an almost inaudible voice, making the millionaire lift his tear-reddened eyes. "Your daughter, she's calling." The man, who had built an enviable fortune through shrewd investments on Wall Street, felt his heart race. During these months of torment, he had heard hundreds of false leads, empty promises from people who only wanted to take advantage of his despair. His dollar fortune attracted all sorts of opportunists, but something in that girl's voice was different. "What did you say?" he asked, crouching down to the child's level. Up close, he could see the scars that marked the girl's thin arms, signs of a life that no child should know. "She's in a dark place, but not too far," the street kid continued, pointing in the direction of the decaying commercial buildings that stood a few blocks away. "I can take you to her." The businessman hesitated. His wealth had taught him to distrust strangers, especially when it came to the disappearance of his 4-year-old heiress. But the pain of 6 months without answers was greater than any prudence. He had lost his wife in an accident 2 years before, and his daughter was all that was left of his family. "Why would you help me?" he questioned, studying the girl's dirty face. "Because I know what it's like to be lost," she replied simply, already starting to walk in the direction she had indicated. The millionaire followed her through the busy streets, past homeless people sleeping in doorways and shopkeepers closing their stores. The girl moved with surprising agility, knowing every alley and shortcut in the downtown area. They walked for 20 minutes until they reached an abandoned commercial building, with broken windows and walls covered in graffiti. "It's down here," the girl said, pointing to a side entrance that led to the basement. "There's a hidden door behind the old boxes." The businessman's heart beat so hard he could hear his own pulse in his ears. He followed the child down the concrete stairs that descended into the darkness. The air smelled of mold and decay, but the girl moved confidently, as if she knew every step. In the basement, between piles of dusty boxes and broken furniture, was a metal door painted the same color as the wall, almost imperceptible. The girl pointed to it with her small finger. "She's in there," she whispered. The millionaire pushed the door open, and it opened with a loud creak that echoed through the empty space. On the other side, a dim flashlight illuminated a small, makeshift room, and there, huddled in a corner on some dirty blankets, was his daughter. The 4-year-old girl looked up when she saw her father, but did not run towards him. Her eyes were empty, absent, as if she were looking through him. The businessman knelt down and pulled her into his arms, feeling how thin and fragile she was. "My daughter, my love," he murmured, kissing the top of her head. But the child remained stiff, not responding to her father's affection. That's when they heard quick footsteps upstairs. The woman who was keeping the girl prisoner had realized she had been discovered. The sound of a door slamming echoed through the building, followed by absolute silence. "She ran," the street kid said matter-of-factly, as if she expected this reaction. The millionaire carried his daughter in his arms, noticing how different, how distant she was. The child who was once talkative and cheerful now remained mute, staring into the void with a lost expression. He couldn't understand how that street kid had known exactly where to find her. "How did you know she was here?" he asked as they left the abandoned building. "I just knew," the street kid replied, shrugging her thin shoulders. "Sometimes I just know things." During the walk back, the businessman watched the two children. His daughter remained completely silent, but the street kid walked beside them as if she were part of the family. There was something disturbing and yet comforting about her presence. "What's your name?" the millionaire asked. "Nobody ever gave me a real name," she replied. "People just call me Kid." "And where are your parents?" "I don't have any," she said without emotion. "Never have." When they arrived at the luxury apartment building, the businessman hesitated at the entrance. He looked at the street kid, then at his traumatized daughter in his arms, and made a decision that would change all their lives. "Do you want to come in?" he asked the street kid. She looked up with big, bright eyes, as if she couldn't believe the invitation. "Just for today," he added quickly, "so I can thank you properly." But when they entered the luxurious apartment, with a panoramic view of the city and furniture that cost more than many people earned in a year, the millionaire realized that there were other people waiting. His new wife, whom he had married 2 months after his daughter's disappearance, was in the living room, accompanied by an older woman he did not recognize. The stepmother got up from the Italian leather couch with an expression that mixed surprise and displeasure. Her eyes quickly scanned the scene, her husband carrying his stepdaughter in his arms and a dirty, ragged child beside him. The elegant woman, who had married the millionaire in a discreet ceremony just 2 months after the disappearance, clearly wasn't expecting that situation. "You found her," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What a wonderful relief. The older woman who was in the room approached with hurried steps. It was the housekeeper who had raised the businessman since he was a child, a grey-haired lady with a penetrating gaze who knew every corner of that luxurious house. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw the girl in her boss's arms. "My little one," she murmured, reaching out her arms. But the millionaire's daughter didn't react, remaining with her empty gaze fixed on some distant point. "And this child?" the stepmother asked, pointing to the street kid with a dismissive gesture. "Where did she come from?" "She helped me find my daughter," the businessman explained, still processing the day's events. "Without her, I never would have discovered where the hideout was." The housekeeper observed the street kid carefully, noting details that had gone unnoticed by the others. The specific scars on her arms, the way she always positioned herself near exits, the eyes that seemed too old for such a young face. They were signs she recognized from decades of caring for children in difficult situations. "She needs a bath and food," the housekeeper said firmly. "I can see she's been malnourished for a long time." "I don't think that's necessary," the stepmother interrupted quickly. "I'm sure she has a family waiting for her somewhere. It would be better to take her to the proper authorities." The millionaire hesitated, torn between the gratitude he felt for the girl and his wife's seemingly sensible words. But it was his daughter who made the decision. For the first time since she had been found, the 4-year-old girl reacted. She reached out her small hand towards the street kid and murmured something almost inaudible. "What was that, my love?" the father asked, moving closer to her. "She's lost too," the daughter whispered, her first words in 6 months. "She helped me when I was scared." The revelation left everyone in silence. The stepmother clenched her fists, clearly bothered by the developing situation. The housekeeper, on the other hand, smiled for the first time in months, seeing signs that the girl was beginning to recover from the trauma. "It's decided then," the businessman declared. "She's staying here at least until I find out more about her situation." That night, after the street kid was bathed and fed by the housekeeper, the family's private doctor arrived to examine both children. Dr. Thompson was an experienced man who had been serving wealthy families in the area for decades, but what he found left him deeply disturbed. "The malnutrition is severe," he explained to the businessman in his private office, "and there are signs of old physical trauma. These scars aren't from common childhood accidents." "What are you saying?" the millionaire asked, feeling a knot in his stomach. "I'm saying this child has been through experiences that no child should live through. And there's something even stranger." The doctor paused, as if he were organizing his thoughts. "Based on her bone structure and dental development, I'd say she's at least 4 years old, maybe older. But the extreme malnutrition and prolonged stress have drastically affected her growth." On the other side of the wall, the stepmother listened to the conversation through the ajar door. Her hands trembled slightly as she processed the information. There were secrets she kept, things she had discovered about the family's recent past, but had never shared. During the following weeks, remarkable changes began to happen in the house. The millionaire's daughter, who had spent 6 months in captivity, began to speak again, but only with the street kid. The two spent hours together, whispering conversations that no one else could hear. The street kid, in turn, demonstrated disturbing knowledge about missing people. During dinner, she casually mentioned details about other children who were lost, as if she had access to information that no one else possessed. "There's a dark-haired boy in the wealthy neighborhoods," she said one night while eating the soup prepared by the housekeeper. "He's in a place similar to where your daughter was, but farther away." The businessman almost dropped his wineglass. "How do you know that?" "I just know," she replied naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The stepmother watched these interactions with growing anxiety. Her wealth, her position in society, all depended on keeping certain truths buried. She had married the millionaire not for love, but for the financial assets he controlled. His fortune in stocks and investments represented the security she had always desired. One afternoon, while the housekeeper was taking the 2 girls to play in the building's private garden, the stepmother decided to act. She went to her husband's office, where he was reviewing reports on his investments in international funds. "We need to talk about this situation," she said, closing the door behind her. "What situation?" the millionaire asked, without looking up from the papers. "The girl. We can't just adopt her as if she were a stray animal we brought home." "She saved my daughter," he replied firmly, "and we're grateful for that. But think about the legal implications, the problems this could bring. She has no documents. We know nothing about her past. There could be family members claiming rights, complicated lawsuits." The businessman finally looked up, studying his wife's face. There was something in her urgency that bothered him, an anxiety that seemed disproportionate to the situation. "Why does this worry you so much?" he asked. The stepmother hesitated for a moment, realizing that she had revealed more than she intended. "I just want to protect our family," she said finally. "Protect what we've built together." That same night, the housekeeper made a discovery that would change everything. While organizing the street kid's clothes, she found something sewn into the lining of the dirty blouse the child was wearing when she arrived. A small piece of paper with numbers written by hand. When she took the discovery to her boss, they both immediately recognized what it was. A registration number from an institution. Not an official institution, but something that operated in the shadows of the great metropolis. "We need to investigate this," the millionaire said, storing the paper in his personal safe. "Be careful," warned the housekeeper. "I have a feeling there are more secrets in this house than we imagine." She was right. Upstairs, the stepmother was making an urgent call to a number that was not in her official phone book. "She's here," she whispered into the phone. "The girl who escaped. She's living in our house." The voice on the other end of the line was cold and calculating. "This complicates things a lot. You know what you have to do." The next morning, the street kid woke up screaming. Her screams echoed through the corridors of the luxurious apartment, waking the whole family. The housekeeper was the first to reach the room, finding the child huddled in the corner of the bed, trembling violently. "What is it, dear?" the elderly woman asked, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "She's back," whispered the girl, pointing to the window. "The bad woman. She's looking for me." The millionaire arrived running, followed by his daughter and the stepmother. His daughter immediately climbed onto the bed and hugged the street kid, as if she understood exactly what she was talking about. "There's no one out there," the stepmother said impatiently. "These are just nightmares of a traumatized child." But the housekeeper was not convinced. She went to the window and carefully observed the street below. A dark sedan was parked across the street, with two people inside observing the building. "Maybe they aren't just nightmares," she murmured. During the following days, strange incidents began to occur. The building's security system experienced mysterious malfunctions. Silent phone calls arrived at specific times. The stepmother seemed increasingly nervous, constantly checking the windows and doors. The businessman decided to hire additional security, but also began his own investigation into the number found on the girl's clothes. Using his connections in the business world, he discovered that the registration belonged to a complex network that operated shady adoption agencies in the city's downtown area. "It's worse than we thought," he reported to the housekeeper during a private conversation. "These people were keeping children in deplorable conditions, selling them to families who didn't ask questions. And our girl escaped from there." "Apparently so. But there's more." The millionaire paused, organizing the disturbing information he had discovered. "The woman who kidnapped my daughter was connected to that same network." The revelation changed everything. It hadn't been an isolated kidnapping motivated by mental imbalance, as they had assumed. There was a more sinister connection, a pattern involving multiple missing children. That afternoon, while the two girls were playing in the garden under the housekeeper's supervision, the millionaire confronted his wife directly. "You knew," he said bluntly when she entered the office. "Knew what?" the stepmother replied, but her voice trembled slightly. "About the kidnapping, about where my daughter was." The businessman's eyes flashed with a cold fury. "All this time, you knew where she was and didn't say anything." The stepmother tried to deny it, but the evidence he had gathered was irrefutable. Phone records, suspicious bank transactions, connections she had tried to hide. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why would you let a child suffer?" "Because she was in the way," the stepmother finally exploded. "Your daughter, your responsibilities, your constant guilt. I thought if she disappeared for a while you'd finally move on. We could be happy." "Happy?" repeated the millionaire, incredulous. "You thought I'd be happy losing my daughter?" "You have so much money, so much power," she continued desperately. "We could have traveled, enjoyed life. Your fortune in euros and dollars could give us anything we wanted." The businessman realized at that moment that he had married a stranger. The woman in front of him was not who he thought he knew. "Get out of my house," he said coldly. "You can't just throw me out like this. We have a prenuptial agreement, legal rights." "Get out," he repeated, "or I'll call security." The stepmother left furiously, but not before making a threat that chilled the millionaire's blood. "You'll regret this, and that street kid won't be here forever. I'll make sure of it." That night, the housekeeper found the street kid sitting on the balcony, looking at the stars with a thoughtful expression that seemed too old for her young face. "What are you thinking about, dear?" the lady asked. "About the other children," the girl replied. "They're still there. I can hear them when they cry." "How can you hear?" "I don't know how to explain it, but I know where they are." The girl turned to the housekeeper with bright eyes. "There's a boy from the wealthy neighborhoods, like I said before. And there are others too. A girl with curly hair who draws butterflies on the wall. A very small boy who doesn't speak properly yet." The housekeeper felt a chill. The descriptions were too specific to be just a child's imagination. "You need to tell him this," she said, referring to her boss. "I will," the girl promised. But first, I need to show you something." She led the housekeeper to her room and showed her a drawing she had made during the afternoon. It was a rudimentary but detailed map, showing streets and buildings in the industrial part of the city. "It's here," she said, pointing to an X marked on the paper. "That's where the other children are." The housekeeper studied the drawing, recognizing real geographical landmarks. It was impossible for a child who had lived on the streets to have such precise knowledge of such a specific area of the city unless— "You've been there," said the housekeeper, understanding. "You know this place because you were held prisoner there too." The girl nodded sadly. "For a long time. Until I managed to escape, but the others couldn't." The next day, the millionaire made a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of several families in the city. He would use his wealth and influence to dismantle the network that had caused so much suffering. He met discreetly with other wealthy families who had lost children in the last 2 years. He discovered that there was a pattern. All the missing children came from families with significant wealth. All were between 3 and 5 years old, and all had disappeared in a similar way. "They choose specific targets," he explained during a secret meeting in his office. "Families with enough capital to pay high ransoms, but also to keep silent if necessary." Dr. Thompson, who was following the case of the 2 girls, made an important medical discovery during this period. Detailed examinations of the street kid revealed that her physical condition was improving drastically with proper care. "It's extraordinary," he explained to the businessman. "In just 3 weeks, she's grown 2 inches and gained 9 pounds. Her condition wasn't genetic, as we initially suspected." "What does that mean?" "It means that with proper nutrition and a safe environment, she will develop normally. But it also means that what they did to her was even more criminal than we imagined." Meanwhile, the millionaire's daughter continued to recover, but only in the presence of the street kid. The 2 had developed their own language, communicating through glances and gestures that no one else understood. It was during one of these silent conversations that the businessman's daughter revealed crucial information. She approached her father one night and whispered details about other children she had met during her captivity. "There's a boy who cries for his parents every night," she said, "and a girl who sings so she won't be afraid. They're in the dark place like I was." The millionaire realized that he had in his hands information that could save those children. But he also knew that acting rashly could alert the criminals and cause them to disappear, taking the children to even more inaccessible places. The decision of how to proceed became more urgent every day, especially when the street kid woke up one morning with a terrifying revelation. "They know where we are, and they're coming to get the children who are left." The urgency in the street kid's words made the millionaire act immediately. He gathered the other affected families and coordinated an operation that would use all of their financial resources and business connections. His fortune, accumulated through strategic investments, would finally have a purpose greater than simple profit and dividends. "We have 24 hours before they move the children," the girl explained during a tense meeting in the apartment. "I can feel when they get nervous. It's like the voices of the other children get weaker." Dr. Thompson had brought portable medical equipment, preparing to care for children who were likely to be in a similar state to what the street kid had arrived in. The housekeeper prepared supplies and clothes, transforming 2 rooms of the apartment into temporary recovery spaces. The businessman used his contacts in the real estate sector to map all the abandoned buildings in the area indicated by the girl's drawing. His business network, built over years managing assets and applications, now served for something much more important than financial profitability. "We found 3 possible locations," he reported to the makeshift team. "We'll need to check them all simultaneously to prevent them from alerting each other." The first attempt almost ended in disaster. When they arrived at the first building, they found only evidence that children had been there recently: broken toys, dirty blankets, marks on the walls. But the place was empty. "They left here this morning," said the street kid, touching one of the marks on the wall. But they didn't go far. It was then that she did something that left everyone speechless. She closed her eyes, remained in absolute silence for a few minutes, and then pointed in a specific direction. That way. 2 blocks north, then 3 east. "How can you know that?" asked one of the mothers present. "I can hear the butterfly girl crying," she replied simply. Following the child's directions, they arrived at a complex of industrial warehouses that had been deactivated years before. The place was perfect for hiding illegal activities, isolated with multiple exits and far from busy residential areas. This time, the approach was more cautious. The millionaire had hired private security professionals, discreet men who knew how to handle delicate situations without involving official authorities who could complicate the situation. They found the children in the 3rd warehouse. 7 children between 3 and 5 years old, all in deplorable conditions, kept in a kind of makeshift dormitory with metal bunk beds and plastic buckets scattered on the floor. The boy from the wealthy neighborhoods was there, exactly as the street kid had described. His dark hair was dirty and disheveled, but his eyes still shone with intelligence when he saw the adults entering the warehouse. "Did you come to get us?" he asked in a weak but hopeful voice. The butterfly girl was also there, drawing with a piece of chalk on the concrete walls. When she saw the street kid, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "You came back," she whispered. "I knew you'd come back to save us." Dr. Thompson quickly examined each child, finding several cases of severe malnutrition and signs of psychological trauma. All would need intensive medical care and prolonged emotional support. Those responsible for the illegal operation had fled, but left behind documents that revealed the frightening extent of the network. There were records of dozens of children who had passed through there over the past 3 years, some sold to families in other regions of the country, others kept for even more sinister purposes. "How did they choose the victims?" asked one of the mothers during the subsequent meeting. It was the ex-stepmother who provided the answer. She had returned unexpectedly that night, not to reconcile, but to make a confession that would change everything. "I provided information," she said, her hands trembling, "about wealthy families, children's routines, parents' schedules. In exchange, they paid me a percentage of the profits obtained." The silence that followed was deafening. The millionaire looked at the woman he had married as if he were seeing a monster. "My own daughter," he murmured. "You handed my own daughter over to these criminals." "I didn't know it was going to last so long," she defended herself desperately. "It was only supposed to be a few weeks for you to learn to value what you had with me." "And the other children?" asked one of the mothers present. "How many other families did you destroy?" The ex-stepmother couldn't answer, sinking into a chair with the weight of guilt finally crushing her. In the weeks that followed, each rescued child was reunited with their family. The millionaire used part of his wealth to pay for medical and psychological treatments for all of them, creating a special fund financed by his investments in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The street kid, officially adopted by the businessman, began to show a spectacular physical recovery. In 2 months, she had grown almost 6 inches and gained 17 pounds. Dr. Thompson documented her evolution as an extraordinary medical case of nutritional recovery. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. During a routine checkup, the doctor made an unexpected discovery while examining an old scar on the girl's arm. "This mark isn't from abuse," he said to the millionaire. "It's a very specific birthmark, almost like a natural tattoo. Why is that important? Because I've seen an identical mark before, in medical records of a family that has been looking for a missing daughter for 4 years. The investigation that followed revealed the most surprising truth of all. The street kid wasn't an orphan, as everyone had assumed. Her biological family had spent the last years searching for her tirelessly, moving to different cities, spending all their savings on private investigations. "They never stopped looking," explained the investigator hired by the millionaire. They moved to upstate 2 years ago, but kept ads in newspapers and missing persons websites. The meeting was organized carefully, with Dr. Thompson present to support the girl during the emotional process. When the biological parents entered the room, the child's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Daddy?" The parents, a simple couple who had lost everything looking for their daughter, ran to hug her. Tears streamed down the faces of everyone present as the family reunited after 4 years of separation. But the girl was torn. She looked at the millionaire and his daughter, then at her biological parents, clearly distressed by the choice she would need to make. "I don't want to leave them," she said, pointing to the family who had taken her in. "But I missed you so much." It was the housekeeper who suggested the solution that would change the definition of family for everyone involved. "Who said you have to choose?" she asked gently. "Families can come in different forms." The agreement established was revolutionary by all conventional standards. The girl would spend part of her time with her biological family upstate, maintaining her roots and original identity. But she would also maintain deep bonds with the millionaire and his daughter, who had become her second family. The businessman used part of his wealth to establish a business for the girl's biological parents, ensuring that they could move back to the metropolis if they wished. His income from investments and funds now financed not only luxuries, but real opportunities for people who needed them. 1 year after their first encounter on the sidewalk, the two families celebrated the girl's birthday together. She had grown 8 inches, gained 33 pounds, and developed a vibrant personality that combined the precocious wisdom of her experiences on the streets with the natural joy of a healthy child. "Can you still hear other lost children?" the millionaire's daughter asked during the party. "Sometimes," she replied, biting into a piece of cake. "But now I know that there will always be someone looking for them. And if I can help, I will." The girl had become an informal ambassador for missing children, working with specialized organizations to locate other victims of similar networks. Her inexplicable ability to locate lost people continued to help desperate families. That night, as the two families watched the sunset from the balcony of the luxury apartment, the millionaire reflected on how his life had changed. His fortune continued to grow through smart investments, but now he understood that true wealth was in the people he loved and the lives he could positively impact. The girl, sitting between her two parents and the businessman who had saved her, looked at the stars and smiled. She had found something more valuable than gold or any cryptocurrency. She had found home in all its possible forms and discovered that true love knows no limits or conventional definitions.